Deep in Afghanistan, a U.S. Navy SEAL team has been ambushed and is now in mortal danger. The Taliban claim responsibility. A rescue mission is immediately launched. Helicopter rescue from a mountain ledge is the SEALs' last hope.
Show yourself. This is Air Force rescue. We are here to pick you up.
And I was thinking, wow, this is pretty small. Are we going to land here?
And I'm like, holy crap, if we, bump over 15, 10 feet, whatever it may be, we're going to hit that wall.
A special operations rescue helicopter has just been shot down. Now it's up to the U.S. Air Force Reserve to take on the mission.
I told the guys in the back, I'm like, if you guys are praying, guys, you might want to pray now.
To succeed, they'll have to confront a helicopter pilot's worst nightmare. High above the Gulf of Mexico, a U.S. Air Force Pave Hawk helicopter is low on gas. These volunteer pilots are with the 920th Rescue Wing, the only reserve rescue wing in the U.S. Air Force. They're rehearsing the delicate art of in-air refueling. It's a vital skill they'll need to fly combat search and rescue missions in Afghanistan.
I came in the Air Force 23 years ago to be a rescue helicopter pilot. That's been a dream of mine even since I was in high school. Now, everybody has their choosing in life, and that's just something that I wanted to do.
Today, Jeff McCrander is commander of operations of this unique aviation unit. For several months of the year, they fly active duty in war zones before many of them return to their civilian jobs. In the summer of 2005, 2 helicopter crews from the 920th are nearing the end of their tour in Afghanistan.
We'd have maybe a couple 2-3 day turnover and then be home, and we already had plans for the 4th of July and parties, and unfortunately none of that happened.
Of course, all good war stories start with there I was. So there I was getting ready to take a shower, and my roommate comes running in and says, hey, your radio just went off and they want you to report to ops right now with a 3-day bag.
This 3-day operation will be a daunting challenge. They are to locate a covert 4-man Navy SEAL team high in the mountains of the Hindu Kush. While attempting to kill a high-ranking Al-Qaeda leader, the SEALs have been caught in a Taliban counterattack. Finding themselves completely surrounded, they call for help. The Taliban claim to have recorded the attack, and this was broadcast on the news. A Chinnok, packed with special operations troops, sets off to extract them in broad daylight. Just as the helicopter makes its approach, a rocket-propelled grenade bursts through the open rear door, exploding the fuel tanks. All 16 on board are killed. It's the single biggest loss of American life in the Afghanistan war. Reeling from this devastating blow to their rescue effort, Special Operations Command turns to the reservists of the 920th Rescue Wing for help.
They're a community, a very proud community, that doesn't like to ask for help from outsiders. And so the initial reception was a little bit cold.
I think that they definitely look down on us, question our training, our crews, our capabilities.
But Skinny convinces them the reservists can do the job.
Our confidence was high that if there was somebody there and they were alive, we were going to find them.
Skinny will be leading his men into the same valley where the Taliban shot down the Chinnok. But instead of the lumbering Chinnok, Skinny's crews will be flying one of the most sophisticated helicopters in the world, a toned-up version of the famous Black Hawk.
We call it a Pave Hawk.
The Pave Hawk is a rescue pilot's dream.
This is our hydraulic hoist that has 200 feet of cable.
Using its in-air refueling probe, the Pave Hawk pilots can fly non-stop for 14 hours.
Our air refueling probe. Another great thing about the aircraft is this FLIR turret and color weather radar.
Its infrared camera and color radar enable it to fly in virtually any weather, day or night. And it has anti-missile defenses, including chaff and flares.
It's a very awesome helicopter.
And I like to think rescue really is one of the most specialized operations in the Air Force. I mean, based on our training and our tactics and that kind of thing. We always like to think of ourselves as special, too.
Each rescue helicopter trains with a crew of 6, 2 pilots, a flight engineer, a gunner, and 2 para-rescue men in the back. The para-rescue men, or PJs, are elite graduates of the so-called Superman School.
We're used to the exciting things, jumping out of airplanes and scuba diving and shooting and running and in the middle of the night and just doing wild things.
PJs are among the most highly trained emergency trauma specialists in the U.S. military. It's the PJs who will be first out of the helicopter when they reach the landing zone. Shortly before nightfall, Skinny's 2 crews set off for their search for the SEAL team. But they have limited information on where to look. This dangerous mission will test their skills to the limit. Combat rescue missions are preferably flown under cover of darkness. By hugging the ground at night, it's almost impossible for the enemy to see or hear them approaching. To enable the pilots to see in the dark, they wear night vision goggles. These image intensifiers amplify the available light from the moon and the stars by up to 5,000 times onto a green phosphor screen. The human eye can distinguish more shades of green than any other color.
With the goggles on the helmet and in, I'm going to get the diopter setting.
When I first started flying goggles in pilot training, it was very difficult to try to look through what I envisioned as toilet paper tubes. You have zero peripheral vision. You constantly got to keep your head on a swivel. It just was difficult.
As you can see, they're out away from my eyes.
But over time, as you got more and more goggle experience, it starts becoming second nature. And now, of course, we don't even think about it.
If it's cloudy or overcast, they can also use their infrared camera to navigate the mountain passes at night. It detects heat, even when there is absolutely no light. Having been baked all day by the sun, the ground registers as a glowing image in the cockpit. Eight hours into their search, high up in the Hindu Kush mountains, the rescuers are still looking and listening for any signal that could locate the SEAL team.
You know, you hear the radio key and you're like, oh, they're right here, you know, they got to be close by, but it's just finding a needle in the haystack. Those mountains were 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet high and a lot of area to cover.
They fly as close as they dare to the mountainside. The faint clicking on the emergency frequencies suggests someone down there is trying to make contact.
I can remember just pleading in my mind, please, please, and we were even doing it over the radios. Please make yourself known. Show yourself. Do anything, because, you know, this is Air Force rescue. We are here to pick you up.
Anxious as they are to find their guys, they also have to be wary of enemy attack.
We were very concerned about what we would call a SAR trap. you know, where the bad guys now maybe have captured these guys and are using their signaling devices to lure the helicopters in to shoot them down. And they had obviously demonstrated an ability to shoot down U.S. helicopters in that area because we were searching the same area where they had just shot down a U.S. helicopter.
Despite fears of being lured into a trap, they do not want to abandon the search. They know that if they don't find the missing SEALs soon, the Taliban surely will. It's been 2 long nights for the combat search and rescue crews. After hours of searching, they still have made no contact with the missing SEAL team. They return to base before sunrise takes away their cover of darkness. Shortly after dawn, there's a breakthrough.
Stop right there.
An old man arrives at a remote Marine base with a handwritten message from a Navy SEAL. The SEAL's name is Marcus Luttrell. He confirms the claim made in the Taliban video. The rest of his unit has been killed in the ambush. He is the sole survivor, and he's badly wounded. The old man's village has given him shelter, but the Taliban have it surrounded. Within hours, the helicopter crews have a satellite photo of the mountain village where Luttrell is hiding. Now, Skinny must devise a rescue plan. First, to pick up Luttrell, then to recover the bodies of his fallen comrades.
You know, as a flight lead, you know, you feel a lot of responsibility because all these guys are your guys, and it's your job to get them in and get them out so they can get back to their families. And you know, it's just one of those things where you kind of stand there and say a prayer, and it's like, oh, Lord, please don't let me screw this up.
This is the moment every combat rescue pilot dreams about, yet dreads. It's when they have to put to the test their years of training. On combat missions, their tactic is to use 2 helicopters to protect each other. Flying into a dangerous landing zone, or LZ, is a skill they practice back home in the Arizona desert. The lead aircraft makes a fast, low-level pass over the landing zone to draw enemy fire. It then pulls up hard and high, leaving the second aircraft to slip in for the pickup. A crucial part of the training is landing on difficult terrain, rocky slopes that could easily lead to disaster. The crew helps guide the pilot in, relaying every obstacle and danger.
If you do that in a smooth, coordinated, relaxed manner, we all work together, so we know how we think. And if you hear a person's voice starting to get a little shrill, you know who they are, that what the problem is, that there is a problem.
These maneuvers are difficult enough in Arizona in daylight, but flying into the Afghan mountains at night, they're extremely hazardous, particularly with the Taliban lying in wait to shoot down another helicopter. On this mission, Skinny decides he'll go first in the lead helicopter and drop a glow stick to mark the landing zone, then fly off to draw away enemy fire. Spanky learns that he'll be the one landing to pick up the Navy SEAL in a village surrounded by the Taliban.
And that's when my heart sank. My comfort level shifted, if you will. Now I frantically started paying more attention to the brief, looking harder at the landing zone. We couldn't really tell the angle. We didn't really understand the sheer steepness of the terrain. You start thinking about your family, about my 4 little boys at home and my wonderful wife, and just saying, you know, if not just for them, don't screw up.
Now I know the route we're taking. I realize where we're flying through. We're flying in the same area, the same valley that the Chinnok had just recently been shot down. And what I found out again that day was that it's within about 2 miles from the location where we watched a guy on the mountain shoot an RPG at our aircraft, and it actually went between the lead and a trail aircraft. So the RPG went right in the middle of our 2 aircraft, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, they've shot at us once. The next time they shot at somebody, they shot them down, and we're flying back into that exact same area. I guess it became real at that point.
This time, the U.S. command is leaving nothing to chance. One of the biggest combat rescue operations ever mounted in the war is underway. Their mission? To rescue the Navy SEAL and retrieve the bodies of his fallen comrades. On the ground, Army Rangers creep toward their target. In the sky, Apache attack helicopters and A-10 Warthogs will target the Taliban positions. A giant refueling aircraft will provide backup. And flying high above the whole operation, a Spectre gunship. At the moment of rescue, this will illuminate the landing zone with a night sun, a giant infrared spotlight invisible to the naked eye, but clear to everyone wearing night vision goggles. With so many people involved, radio chatter crowds the airwaves.
Intensity of the calls got louder and louder and quicker, and until it was at times, some guys, it seemed like were screaming on the radio.
It's very tempting just to pull up the radios, but you know, you gotta keep your ears open. It is just constant chatter. It's hard enough to hear your crew, let alone assets that aren't even on the same continent. Everybody wants to know the status. What's the status? What's the status?
As the Pave Hawks speed on to their destination, one call penetrates the radio chatter. A new location for the pickup point.
The coordinates for the survivor have changed by 2 kilometers.
In this steep mountain terrain, a difference of a mile could mean landing on a valley floor or on the face of a cliff.
That sparked a little helmet fire for me. We're inbound, we're freaking 3 minutes out from the LZ, and I'm like, I don't need a grid coordinate right now, because I can't come in focused inside this aircraft and put that in fast enough.
As they scramble to adjust, they realize the new location makes no sense.
I couldn't tell any difference. There's no difference in distance, there's no difference in time, and at this point, even with my helmet on, I'm sure I was pulling what little hair I had left out.
Finally, they realize someone at command has added an extra decimal place on the end of the coordinates, almost jeopardizing the mission.
It turns out, due to a misapprehension of what the scale of the maps and the coordinate format that they were using, the actual objective did not change the 2 kilometers that we were told. It changed precisely 2 meters on the map.
Now, Skinny and Spanky make their final approach. They turn off the main river valley and begin a steep ascent. The moon isn't up yet, and clouds shrouding the mountains are blocking what little light there is from the stars.
Once we turned up the canyon, it seemed to get darker. There was not very much illumination at all. Our goggles were basically almost shutting down because of that.
Now, to see in the dark, they have to rely on their infrared camera. The small screen displays the residual heat from the mountain rocks, outlining the horizon ahead.
We pretty much were hugging the terrain. Of course, we're climbing now because we've been in a river valley. We're trying to climb up to the elevation of where the LZ was. And so we're climbing up and trying to follow the contours best we can. And it's all on my side, so the mountain's all on the right-hand side of the aircraft.
But then as we got closer, we started seemed at first like lightning, but we soon realized it wasn't that.
The lighting is actually gunfire from American forces.
They're covering the sound of our rotors with large gunfire, U.S. Friendly gunfire. You can see some of the rounds impacting the ridge, about a mile off from where we were.
Left side.
Below them, a battle rages between U.S. forces and the Taliban. The valley is alive with infrared marker strobes. These bright pulses are only visible with night vision goggles. This is how every Ranger on the ground and American aircraft in the sky identifies themselves.
Everybody in their right mind is turning on their strobe light and saying, hey, I'm a friendly, don't shoot over here.
IR strobe looks a lot like, muzzle flashes. It's really hard to keep your calm and not be trigger happy.
To reduce the risk of being hit by enemy fire, they begin evasive maneuvers, yanking and banking through the twists and turns of the valley. They are entering a dangerously hot war zone.
This is really bad. It's scary dark, but at least the landing zone's going to be illuminated.
But there's no sign of the spotlight Spanky is expecting. The infrared night sun on board the Spectre gunship cannot burn through the cloud layer to eliminate the landing zone.
I remember the gunship very loudly screaming, halos, negative burn, negative burn.
The helicopter's landing zone is shrouded in total darkness. A lucky break. Flying much lower, A-10 Warthogs are attacking the Taliban positions. One Warthog pilot spots a gap in the clouds, and with split-second timing, pinpoints the landing zone with his targeting laser.
It was just a beam of light exactly where I needed to land.
It was like the finger of God. Like, there's a LZ. That's how we got a really good sight of what the LZ looked like.
This landing zone is a tiny shelf hacked from the side of a mountain.
To be honest, it was the size of an LZ that I don't think pilots would even land in the daytime if they really had the chance. I mean, I was thinking, wow, this is pretty small. Are we going to land here?
Flight leader Skinny prepares to drop the glow stick that will mark the spot where Spanky is supposed to land in the second helicopter. Skinny scores a bullseye with the glow stick, and just as planned, he banks away to draw enemy fire. If the Taliban take the bait, the path should now be clear for Spanky's helicopter to make the pickup.
I never got the sense that it was going to be that tricky. I knew it was going to be a bit hairy.
As commander, Spanky takes the controls for the final approach.
I remember Dave Gonzalez had his hands up on the throttles in order to go to emergency lockout to give us more power if that was the case. And setting up for the landing, I thought, I think it's actually going to work. And then it all went south in a hurry.
You can feel the pitch change. You can feel the pitch in the blades. You can hear the engines. Even though my adrenaline had been going, my heart started beating a little bit more. It was like, okay, here we are. Let's just stay focused.
You know, all the way up to that point, all the way up to where we were 10 feet above the ground, everything was nice and calm.
And then, brownout.
In the last seconds of the approach, the downwash of the rotors whips up a blinding cloud of desert dust.
And that's probably a helicopter pilot's worst nightmare. Up in the mountains, on a very dark night, in a very tight, confined space, browning out and now losing all visual references.
Now I can no longer see the strobe lights on the LZ. And if I can't see the strobe lights on the LZ, the pilots can't see the strobe lights on the LZ, and that becomes a problem.
We've got instruments to kind of tell us our drift, but it's just, we can't fly with our eyes closed, and it feels like you've got your eyes closed. If I was drifting and tried to bring it down on the ground, my tires would hit, and I would inevitably, most likely, roll over.
In a brownout, it's hard to tell whether the helicopter is drifting left or right. A pilot landing blind on an uneven surface risks rolling over. The first wheel to touch the ground becomes a tipping point that can trigger disaster.
It's very easy for the helicopter to continue and pivot on that point, roll over, blades hit the ground, and that's all she wrote.
As they brace themselves for touchdown, Spanky's crew are all on maximum alert.
I remember looking to my left and I could see a wall from the mountain. And I just saw that and I'm like, holy crap, if we, bump over 15, 10 feet, whatever it may be, we're gonna hit that wall. Then Spanky saw on his side a 1,500, 2,000 foot drop off.
On a narrow ledge in a brownout, there's little room for error.
I started drifting, unfortunately, left towards the rock face, where my rotors would hit and inevitably crash, and then we'd have a bigger problem on our hands.
I told the guys in the back, I'm like, if you guys are praying, guys, you might want to pray now.
Being in the business as long as I have, I know that helicopter crashes are nasty, and there's one thing you can do to kind of maybe save yourself, and it's lay down. Because at that point I figured we're gonna crash.
By now, Spanky should be safely on the ground, but he's still hovering blind in the dust, completely dependent on directions from his crew.
You can hear the pilots just back and forth, stop left, stop right, stop left, and it just continues. That pilot has controls, co-pilot, and it was an orchestra of I don't even know how to explain it.
I had noticed the tail had gotten somewhere between 2.5 to 5 feet of some of the trees. I told the pilot, and as I was kind of turning around the aircraft, and I had to get my bearings about me and figure out which was left and which is right to him, to me, to the aircraft, and so it got a little confusing.
If you got a nice, calm person in the back saying, hey man, stop right, you need to come a little left, you're going to put a little left correction in. When you got somebody in the back screaming, stop right, you're going to react to whatever you're hearing in the back, because there could be some big tree there and you really want to get the aircraft away.
The warning cries to avoid hitting the wall or the trees make Spanky pull the aircraft hard right. At the same time, Gonzo, fearful of the drop-off on the other side, goes to the dual controls to prevent Spanky overcorrecting. The Pave Hawk has 2 sets of controls that can be operated simultaneously, or in this case, allow a co-pilot to moderate a maneuver.
I just put my hand up by the stick because I was expecting a huge correction, and I just kept Spanky from making that. My technique is when I come into the LZ, 10 feet off the ground, look for a reference, a rock, anything that's not going to blow away. And I went down and looked, and I didn't see, I just didn't see nothing. It was just dust.
things started going in slow motion, I knew we were going to crash, and I knew I was going to let everybody down. Everything starts rolling through your head. Mission preparation, your family, your kids, and just the sense of grief and failure, like we came here to pick this guy up that needs our help, and now I'm going to crash and roll down the mountain. But right when I felt that all was lost, when the dust cleared just enough, I couldn't see the ground, I couldn't see the rock face, I couldn't see anything, but that terrace that was on my left side came in front of me, and about 50 feet, 40 feet off my nose, I could see what I could describe as a hanging pot as a child on our back patio, where my mom had these pots that hung out on our porch, if you will, and that the plant would just drape off of it, and when the wind blew, the leaves would rustle and stuff. And that was the only thing I could see. I couldn't see the ground, I couldn't see the village, I couldn't see the rock wall, I couldn't see anything but this blowing bush. It was a hover reference that I had that could tell me left or right or up or down, and I instantly was able to get control of the aircraft into a solid hover.
Only when the dust settles do they realize the incredible tightness of the landing zone.
We were probably less than 2 feet from the edge. I wouldn't even have done this in Tucson during the day, probably. It would just have been stupid. Yeah, I wouldn't have done it even during the day.
We landed. Their job is done. Well, for the meantime, my job begins. So we jump out, and as we're coming out, I see something directly straight behind the tail rotor. Whatever this is coming at us, we don't want it to get anywhere near the helicopter. You have to kind of protect the crew as well as part of the deal. So I see what looks to be a man, big guy, and he's wearing Afghani clothes. We call them man jammies. And one of the things that went through my head was, if it were an American, let's just say an American were dressed up, their chances are they're not going to walk up to a tail rotor. They know it's a helicopter, I'm going to go around, and that's just a rule. You don't go near the tail rotor. So at this point in time, I had to think quickly, and I drew my weapon, and my plan was to shoot him, because at this point he was a threat to me. A second individual comes out from behind him. So now I'm thinking, okay, I've got two guys that are threats, I'm just going to shoot the both of them. I literally had my finger on the trigger, and then immediately, and thank God, the third person comes out from behind. And the third person was clearly United States military. I'm looking at him now, I'm this close, I know he's American.
It's a U.S. Ranger, and he quickly indicates which of the men is Luttrell. To Checky's surprise, Luttrell is dressed in Afghani clothes and also able to walk.
I immediately, instinctively, go into an authentication role. And one of the things I'd memorized was his favorite superhero was Spider-Man. He'd also had his dog's name. Now, I really only needed to ask him one question, but I went ahead and asked him both. But anyway, I asked him, what's your favorite superhero? And he looked at me like, what? What are you talking? Oh, yeah, I know, okay. He told me it was Spider-Man. Excellent. Same with me. It's my favorite superhero as well.
Once Marcus Luttrell's identity is confirmed, they realize he needs urgent medical attention. They will have to fly him back to base before attempting to locate the dead bodies of his friends.
There's still a battle going on, like literally 100 meters from where we are. I mean, it's literally as we sit there. And I'm thinking, we haven't left yet. What's going on here? And they're waiting for me, so I hit the mic and I said, go, go, go. And they were like, all right. And then we were up and at it.
Pulled straight up and then just dove off of the cliff into the dark hole.
And then, of course, all the chatter came back on the intercom. Everything was going crazy. I looked at Marcus. I started talking to him. He sat in a corner. It was kind of surreal at this point. I kind of realized that we just rescued him, and this guy, you know, and all of his buddies are dead. So as I look into Marcus, I got my night vision goggle and I'm focusing it. And I just want to get a good look at him. And you can see the look in his eyes. You can just see the intensity that this guy had been through. And I don't even know how to explain what I saw, but it was pretty amazing. I tapped him on the shoulder, I shook his hand, and I said, "Welcome home, brother."
With only 5 minutes of fuel remaining, they just make it to a forward base where they deliver Marcus Luttrell. His legs full of shrapnel, a SEAL to the end, he insists on walking to the medical unit.
We landed back in Jalalabad, and I'm just like, man, just looking at Spanky, I'm like, oh yeah, man, we did it. We're done.
That's when everything started hitting me. The PJs in the back, especially Perchecki, was hooping and hollering. He was standing outside my window, pounding on the glass. And I just remember thinking, they have no idea how close we were to crashing. And I don't think they fully realized just how close they were to balling it up on the mountainside. And that's when the wave of adrenaline left me, and I just start shaking.
Spanky's thoughts are now 7,000 miles and half a world away.
All I wanted to do was talk to my wife, Penny. It was Saturday morning for her, and she was at the fabric store buying fabric for curtains. And it was just so amazing to talk to her and hear her voice and let her know that I was safe. And she said, "Did you just do what you've been training for over 10 years to do?" And I kind of got emotional, and I told her to stop it. There's guys right outside this tent that whatever, so I'm wiping my eyes, telling her I'm all fine, but it was a great feeling to know that I did do what I'd been training to do for all those years, that a lot of people don't get that opportunity.
For Skinny and the men of the 920th Rescue Wing, there is one last job. Somewhere on that black mountainside lie the bodies of 3 Navy SEALs. To bring them home, the rescue crews will fly into one of the most hostile environments they have ever encountered. Since the Civil War, every effort has always been made to recover and identify the bodies of American soldiers. The bodies of Luttrell's fallen comrades lie in terrain so steep it's impossible to land. Instead, the helicopters will hover to allow the pararescue men to rappel down. But there's an added complication. Flying at night in the high mountains of Afghanistan, the air is so thin, the rotor blades can't generate enough lift to allow the fully equipped rescue helicopter to hover. This becomes particularly acute when attempting to hover over a steep slope. Hovering near a flat surface causes the flow of air through the rotor disc to slow down. Known as ground effect, this makes hovering easier. Pilots think of it as a cushion of air. But a helicopter hovering over a steep slope, as it will have to on this mission, no longer benefits from ground effect. To achieve the same amount of lift, it will either need more power or less weight. Otherwise, it will be in trouble. Before they take Checky and the pararescue men back in again, they'll need to drastically reduce their load.
How do you lighten these helicopters? Well, you take these big heavy fuel tanks off. You take these big heavy machine guns off. We thought it just might work.
They pulled everything off of that helicopter that wasn't nailed down, and they pulled off some things that were nailed down. I made the hard call to say, we're going to pull all the weapons and ammo off, too.
I was like, what? What do you mean you're going to take the guns? I was told in tech school that when you deploy, you'll never take your hand off the weapon. Well, that didn't really work out so well.
I even went so far as to remove the body armor in the back of my vest, just because that's really heavy. Of course, I didn't tell anybody that, because that's a no-no.
At their pre-flight briefing at Bagram Air Base, a senior officer reminds Skinny of the fate of the downed Special Forces Chinnok.
He basically said, America cannot afford to lose another helicopter on that mountain. I mean, those were his words to me. Where we were going in, the 47 had crashed just on the other side of the same mountain that we were about to go and hover on.
This time, it's Skinny who will be making the pickup. In the middle of the night, they fly out to the place where U.S. Rangers and the ground have found the bodies of the SEALs.
We entered a hover, I think it was about 85 feet. But you have to understand, it was 85 feet above a point that was on a very, very steep incline.
And there were basically about 40 to 60-foot trees all around the LZ, but there was a fairly clear area that was just big enough for me to kind of snuggle down inside of that, where, you know, I'm kind of looking at the top of the trees out my window.
Surrounded by gunfire, the PJs rappel down to locate the bodies.
So you're on the side of a mountain with night vision goggles, and you're trying to tie knots, and you've got gloves on, and you're trying to negotiate rocks. Then you get to the site where the body is, and you've got to tie in. You hope that you're able to secure the body so it doesn't, you know, it could literally fall.
Hovering above the PJs, the Pavehawk's engine strained to maintain lift.
You've got rock slides from the top of the mountain coming down on you. And you got to remember, you're a combatant in a wartime theater. So you've got to post teams all around to secure that operation, so you don't necessarily have to worry about shooting when somebody else hopefully will be shooting for you. So there's a lot going on.
As ground troops exchange fire with the Taliban, the PJs secure the bodies. It's time to bring the last men home and lay them to rest.
Tower Jolly 22 at the HTA Gulf Links departure.
I realized halfway home, it's 4th of July. And I said, you know, you don't get much more patriotic than this.
Someone, I wish it was me, but it was not, had the forethought to take 2 American flags. It was a wonderful touch and a wonderful service that these guys did, covering the body bag with the American flag to hail them appropriately.
It was still dark when we landed back at Bagram, I remember. And of course we landed and we taxied in. And there was a group of people that were standing around. And I remember these folks, basically when the doors open, they all snap to attention because they see the flags there.
With outstanding bravery, the men of Air Force Reserve Combat Search and Rescue have saved Luttrell and recovered the bodies of his comrades.
We're rescue guys. We always want to bring everybody back alive if we can. I mean, there's a little bit of pride in me to know that that I helped bring him back to his family. You know, even though I would have rather, I mean, as rescue guys, we'd rather bring them all back alive if we could. That just wasn't in our cards that day to be able to do that. So.
It was a huge honor for me to know that Skinny trusted me enough to send me in to do, quite frankly, that a lot of us never will do in our career. And I thank him for that.
For their heroism, Each crew member of the helicopter rescue team was awarded the Air Force Medal. Spanky was promoted to lieutenant colonel and now evaluates the latest rescue procedures. Checky is training to be a doctor. Skinny now has 4 squadrons under his command.